Welcome to Creature Guide Live Daily News. For those of you that don't know, my name is Ethan. Today we're going to go over a new Triassic species of Archosaur discovery. And we are streaming on both Rumble, YouTube, and Kick. Seems to be some sort of a primitive Archosaur, probably from the early Triassic. From Sci News, Triassic Crocodile relative may have learned to walk on two legs. Well, this wouldn't be too surprising considering this was occurring with many species of reptiles back in the Triassic period over 210 million years ago. And I'd say for around 45 to 50 million years, there were different species that had this sort of ability. Fossils from the Chinle Formation of Petrified Forest National Park in Arizona, the United States, reveal that Soncellucus cedrus, a species of Shuvasaurid that lived about 215 million years ago, likely began life walking on four legs before shifting to a bipedal stance as it matured. So, oh, that's interesting. Okay, I haven't heard of that with certain species of Pseudosuchian specifically, which is what animals like Ephegia, Suncellucus. Who else? I think there was the Silosuchus that was also a member of this group, which the Pseudosuchians first evolved somewhere around 245 million years ago, towards the first 10 million years of the Triassic period, and would evolve into a wide range of different species of crocodilomorphs, essentially any species of or every species of crocodilomorph that we know of so far. And those are different species that are closely related to the crocodilomorphs compared to, unlike the different species of dinosaurs, which came from an entirely different group of archosauromorphs. But what is interesting and rather surprising is that many species of crocodilomorphs or pseudosuchians that are viewed as being strictly bipedal and only walking on their hind legs and really not having the ability to support any weight on their forelimbs. As you can see with these animals, they have extremely small forearms, so unlikely, at least at their adult stages, to support any of their weight. Maybe they could carry certain dead amphibians or reptiles much smaller themselves. But outside of that, it's just rather surprising that when they were young, they were strictly quadrupedal. And that's a huge evolution in walking on all fours and then all of a sudden not having the ability to support any of your weight on the upper part of your body. So Soncellucus cedrus was a type of Shuvasauridae, a small group of pseudosuchian archosaurs characterized by a body plan strikingly convergent with that of ornithomimid theropod dinosaurs. I wouldn't compare it to ornithopods. I'd actually maybe compare it to certain other species of theropod dinosaurs, maybe even possibly during the early Jurassic period. Actually, you could even say the Triassic with certain species of coelophysids. And since it said 215 million years ago in Arizona, this is about 2 million years before a more famous species of theropod dinosaur would evolve called Coelophysis. But there was another creature. Let's look him up. About the same size, maybe slightly smaller, Camposaurus. Camposaurus. Also, if you're watching on the short version, if you go to the main channel and click on the full screen version, you'll be able to see um, everything else. So
It'll just be larger.
let's see. Also, when it comes to animals like Soncellucus, many of the different species of pseudosuchians, they were carnivorous, at least also with the earlier species. Ephegia might be a bit of a debate. It is very possible might have been omnivorous, but there are also different species of pseudosuchians today, such as the different species of crocodilians that can be quite omnivorous. Alligators, crocodiles, caimans are known for feeding on different species of fruits as well as seeds, and not just mammal, reptilian, or amphibian meat. This could be Camposaurus. Sometimes, yeah, this is Camposaurus. Looking at the head structure, It's, I would say, in some cases, maybe a bit more broad than Coelophysis. Coelophysis seems to be a bit more of an elongated and thinner sort of a skull structure in general, but a very similar body structure belonging to the same family of theropod dinosaurs, Coelophysidae, and living in Arizona around 215 million years ago. Also, likely different parts of Texas, New Mexico, Utah,
Okay, I'm
and
not sure about this.
this is possibly another representation of Nisosaurus or a close relative. Now, the amphibians, I'm not sure what's wrong with the one in the background. I think he's dead. But the one
Oh, I thought
in
you were being funny, and then I looked at it.
yeah, he's I think it's supposed to maybe represent the dry season. I think this one's alive over here. I'm not sure what species of temnospondyle amphibian this could be. But the temnospondals first evolved during the not the Permian period, the Carboniferous period over 325 million years ago. And they would live on for another 200 million years. Well, nearly 200, but they thrived during the Triassic period. There were certain species large enough to consume dinosaurs like Camposaurus or Coelophysis, and slightly even larger dinosaurs. But this is a good, I guess, statue, or it's a model of a Camposaurus. I'd say Camposaurus has a bit more, I think, of like a curved sort of a skull structure, especially in the upper jaw compared to Coelophysis. A very small species of dinosaur, but not necessarily surprising for the Triassic period, especially also the earlier late Triassic, not reaching much more than 8.5 feet in length or pushing around 2.5 meters and maybe weighing about 40 to 50 pounds or a little over 20 kilograms. Also, unless the other picture showed it, Camposaurus was likely covered in feathers, despite us not really having any skin fragments showing that it had skin or feathers at the moment.
But it was you think it was covered.
Due to how closely related it is to many other groups of theropod dinosaurs that had feathers, also its small size, it's likely it would have had at least a light feather covering along its body.
Uh,
Uh,
there you
what
go.
about what about these? Oh, you're saying it showed Camposaurus under these toothed terror birds,
Yes,
which we don't have any
and it's
evidence
feathered.
for. Yeah, toothed terror birds. It's got a very vulture sort of an accumulation, which is certainly possible. But um, what? I have no idea what type of reptile that it's feeding on. Probably didn't coexist with it at the time either. There were certain species of terror bird. Terror birds didn't occur during the time of the dinosaurs. There would be certain species that evolved right after the dinosaur extinction, some around 60 to 62 million years ago, with species like Diatrima during the Paleocene epoch. However, that specific species of terror bird, it used to be assumed that it was a carnivore, but looking at how simply dull the beak structure is, it seems, well, also how robust specifically too. It seems as if it was just mainly feeding on different species of fruits and seeds.
Somebody said, "I'm surprised there were no quadruple megatheropods."
Quadrupedal
Uh,
megatheropods, or at least that's what.
that's what they meant to say.
Um, it is a bit surprising with that. Why do they specifically become strictly bipedal? And considering there are or most or practically almost every species of large mammalian carnivore is quadrupedal, the crocodilomorphs, for a large extent or to a large extent, are strictly quadrupedal as well. Only the smaller species seem to be bipedal. So, yeah, I do find that quite odd. Even at the very beginning of the Saurischians' evolution, which is the group of dinosaurs in which the theropods belong to, they were bipedal as well. But immediately, well, no, with the theropods, not specifically the all the Saurischians, including the sauropods, not all of them were bipedal. But I'd say before the first true sauropodomorphs would evolve, um, those specific Saurischians were still bipedal. Yeah, it is shocking. But, yeah, I wouldn't compare it with ornithomimids. Ornithomimids, first of all, have very long arms compared to their body size. These small arms are a very common trait in these earlier species of pseudosuchians. This is not a common trait. Actually, it's not a trait at all that you see in any species of ornithomimids. Ornithomimids have rather almost like slender to very thin types of long arms, but still capable, maybe not necessarily of pushing up their weight to an extent. I would assume so. They were quite long, but not this short. You might as well compare them to a tyrannosaur or an abelisaur. That might be better, or certain medium-sized species of theropods in the early Jurassic. Actually, I think I meant to say Camposaurus.
Compare them how?
Well, just simply how short they are compared to their body size.
What about their arms?
Yeah, I will say though they're not very muscular, whereas the larger theropods, despite their arms' small size, were very robust. The animal was about 63.5 centimeters or 25 inches tall, had a toothless beak, a large eye socket, and hollow bones. That's not surprising when it comes to the hollow bones. The question is, were these crocodilomorphs or pseudosuchians specifically? These weren't true crocodilomorphs. Animals like Soncellosuchus, Silosuchus, and Ephigia are members of the Papasaur lineage of pseudosuchians. And certain members also became the Shuvasaurids, like Shuvasaurus. Still a member of the Papasaur lineage. But you can have hollow bones, but they're still much more dense. So it is possible these crocodilomorphs had much more dense bones, and maybe as they aged. It is quite odd going from quadrupedal to strictly bipedal, not even having a sort of combination of the two. Although similar to the ornithomimid dinosaurs, these features would have evolved separately, and this similarity was probably due to the fact that croc-line and bird-line archosaurs evolved in the same ecosystems and converged upon similar ecological roles. Yeah, that does sound about right. I mean, in many different ecosystems, different fossil formations from the Triassic period, we do find a wide variety of different species of crocodilomorphs, and they're more common back in the Triassic with the different species of early dinosaurs and um, branches of the Archosaur family that are more closely related to dinosaurs and birds than compared to crocodilomorphs. Then later on in the Jurassic and Cretaceous eras. At least I went a bit off with that. I'm specifically referring to crocodilomorphs or the pseudosuchians were very successful during the Triassic, said Elliot Armour Smith, a researcher at the University of Washington. Also, despite the fact that features like bipedalism, a toothless beak, hollow bones, and a large orbit are characteristic of ornithomimid theropod dinosaurs. Those features are the ornithomimids had very hollow bones, depending on the species. But toothless beak, that's also very common in nearly every species of ornithomimid. In fact, because um, they're likely not going to have a picture, let's look up a species of ornithomimid. Let's just bring up Gallimimus. Gallimimus.
Okay, I'll start with an old one.
Like 1950s or oh, it's not bad. Oh, wait a second. It wouldn't be 1950s because unless another paleontologist from a different country found it, because I was thinking of only American paleontologists at the moment. Paleontologists from the United States were cut off from areas of Mongolia and I think certain parts of possibly northern China, but at least Mongolia, for several decades due to the Soviet Union. And supposedly were only let back into the area like by 1990. So unless Gallimimus was found during like the 1910s, the 1920s, um, it wouldn't be until fairly recently that it was discovered. What I mean by that is the 90s, but I believe it was discovered much earlier. Okay, this is definitely a really good reconstruction of a Gallimimus. It's also got a lot more height to it. So this is a member of the ornithomimid lineage of dinosaurs. So basically, the ostrich-like dinosaurs. They are members of the theropod family. Somebody altered the eye socket. This is from a specific book. That is not supposed to be like that. He has a lot of personality with these specific eyeballs that I remember. He's being chased by a Tarbosaurus in this scenario. Though I swear it's supposed to be an ornithomimus being chased by a T Rex
What's
originally.
with the beak?
Yeah, it might be slightly altered too. Yep, that is somebody ruined that.
Wait, which one?
This
Oh,
this specific picture. So yeah, this one's really good. I like how the feathers, it's sort of light, sort of a coating. You might have had certain cool sort of um, waves of temperature occur back in late Cretaceous Mongolia. So this was somewhere around 74 to 75 million years ago, back in the late Cretaceous. So before animals like Tarbosaurus, Velociraptor, and Protoceratops would have evolved, and in some cases, even certain species of hadrosaurs in the region, like Tyrannosaurus, which is a distant relative to the North American Parasaurolophus. In fact, let's bring him up. CharonOSAur. There we go. So
I didn't even hear what you asked for.
Ornithomimus was about 15 to 17 feet in length, or pushing 5 meters, and probably weighed some around 3 to 400 pounds, or ranging to somewhere between 150 to 190 kilograms. Yeah, Tyrannosaurus also likely had a somewhat shorter crest compared to the North American Parasaurolophus. However, it was close to the same size, if not in some cases slightly larger. But it seems that also, in some ways, when it comes to the crest structure, it might have been slightly more robust. But this is a member of the Saurolophini lineage of hadrosaurs. So this animal also existed over in. Whoa, that's not a good representation of one. At least this AI picture is off, especially in the crest structure. It's far too thin, even for a Parasaurolophus. It's off. The tail's a bit too stubby. It's a bit short in overall length, and the arms are not the arms. The feet, or the front feet, are not in like a hoof-like position. Also, the toes, specifically on the hind feet, are far too short. So it's yeah, this is a bit better. I think it's like from a book back in the late 1990s or early 2000s.
Back feet look funny.
Yeah, they do. They almost represent like a certain species of Metracanthosaur, or another lineage of the Megalosaur lineage of theropod dinosaurs back in the Jurassic, even into the early Cretaceous. But they don't really represent that of the hind foot of a hadrosaur, which tend to be much wider. Maybe not to. I was about to compare it with certain ceratopsian feet, but ceratopsian feet and toes are fairly distinct from hadrosaurs. The feet, I was going to say, or toes, are a bit better here, but the rest of the animal is completely off. Um, I'd say if, somebody was just working on a model, it's not bad, but in overall accuracy, it's completely off. The neck is far too skinny, the crest is too thin as well, and a bit short. The front of the snout, or where the beak is I think a little too small. It's almost like that of a nodosaur, a group of armored dinosaurs that existed from the late Jurassic, around 150 million years ago, to the very end of the Cretaceous, around 66 million years ago. And they're known for having very small snouts compared to their close relatives, the ankylosaurs. Um, the front feet, however, on this animal looks much better, at least in being a more hoof-like structure. I do think the tail's a bit short. Tyrannosaurus was fairly large, probably pushing about 35 feet in length, or 11 meters, and pushing around 5 to 6 tons. But back to the Triassic, around 215 million years ago. Seleucus cedrus is represented by over 950 fossil specimens from a minimum of 36 individuals. Whoa, okay, I didn't know that. That is astounding. There are certain species of pseudosuchians, probably due to being buried by a flash flood, um, well, also with the several layers of sediment, that there are just several individuals piled on top of each other. This has also happened with different species of amphibians back in the Permian period, over 200, somewhere between 275 to 280 million years ago. It actually occurs in many instances over in the red beds of Texas, where there have been several species of not necessarily temnus spondylus, but distant relatives. Close related to amphibians such as Eriops, that over like 40 different individuals have been found um, clustered against one another. Also, possibly due to a flash flood or at least some sort of a landslide. So, by analyzing the proportions of the limb skeletons of different animals, we determined its bipedal stance may have been the result of a differential growth pattern. We think that Soncellosuchus cedrus had more proportional forelimbs and hind limbs as young, and their hind limb grew longer and more robust through adulthood. This is interesting how in different lineages of animals, you have it where some as or when they're young, they have very long legs compared to their body size, and as they become older, they tend to well shorten, but they become more robust or stocky. Um,
So basically, they get fat.
To an extent, I would well, yeah, I mean, they do have the ability to get fat, but, I was thinking of the pachycephalosaurs and how when they matured, they become a bit shorter, at least in leg length. But however, with this specific, Pseudosuchian, their legs become longer compared to their body size or relative to their body size, which is interesting. Um, Quite distinct, I'd say, among many species of pseudosuchians in general. I do wonder when it comes to animals like the more famous Postosuchus if that occurred, or even the Proterosuchus. However, Proterosuchus was a quadruped, unless I'm no, it was. I was thinking of Smilosuchus for a second. I mean, not just mixing up whether it's in the Permian or the early Triassic. Anyway, let's keep going. Essentially, we think these creatures started out their lives on four legs. They then started walking on two legs as they grew up. This is particularly peculiar. Also, let's look up another species of dinosaur from the time slightly later, though. Euskelesaurus. So Euskelos. Oh, popped up. Does it look like a certain species of like plateosaur or sauropodomorph? Plateosauromorph, sauropodomorph. Okay. This is one of or what's about to pop up. Um, at least so far, it comes from South Africa and around 210 million years ago. So during the last 8
There you go.
million years of the Triassic. Well, this is definitely an interesting older depiction of an Euskalosaurus. So this is a member of the Plateosauridae lineage of sauropodomorphs. It's not just some random prosauropod. Whoa! This is interesting. I wonder if it's due to the close relations early on in the Saurischian dinosaurs' evolution back in the Triassic, as to why more recent reconstructions of the prosauropods um, are being reconstructed with feathers these days. And later on, at least with the sauropods, there aren't really there are certain reconstructions of larger sauropods where they will certain paleo artists will add huge porcupine quill like feathers to their necks. But besides that, when it comes to the fluffiness, it really doesn't occur.
And here we go again.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with this guy. It's just an abused diatrima. He just wants to feed on some fruit and nuts. Anyway, also he lived in dense forests, not amongst, at least it looks like a volcanic area. Wow. I
Those are
think
some big legs.
I think this is a model. I don't think it's AI. Um, yeah, I think even the toes might be a bit off, and also when it comes to the front arms, this animal, it seems, was quite quadrupedal, and the Euskalosaurus could reach well over 40 feet in length. They're pushing 12.2 meters and probably weighed somewhere around 8 tons. It was one of the largest species of platysaurs to exist during the Triassic period over in South Africa and possibly Tanzania. There might have been certain specimens that were discovered. The platysaurs were a pretty successful group of sauropodomorphs during the Triassic and the Jurassic periods. They first evolved shortly after some of the first true species of theropod dinosaurs, and as well as certain other sauropodomorphs around 228 million years ago, and seem to have gone extinct around 190 million years ago during the first 12 million years of the Jurassic.
Okay, this guy looks like he's part camel.
Geez, what's okay? This guy looks like it was probably AI, but yeah, camel, and for how skinny that neck is, it's unlikely he would be able to keep his neck up. Just literally the whole animal in general would probably collapse. Even when you look at dromedary camels, the one-humped camel today, it has a much more muscular neck structure compared to what it's showing here on this reptile. I'm not even calling it a dinosaur because it is so hideous. Also, it has such a short tail compared to its body size. It's not just hideous; it's just completely out of proportion with everything. Now, there were certain, not necessarily, I think, archosauromorphs, unless I'm mistaken for something else. No, 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 it was pseudosuchian.
Wait, are these part greyhound?
I don't think it's Euskalosaurus. It's supposed to represent somebody else, but yeah, it's definitely showing a somewhat greyhound appearance to an extent, but greyhounds have much longer forelimbs compared to their body size, unlike these specific sauropodomorphs. Very similar to what you see in a cheetah to an extent. Um, these animals do not look like they would be fast runners. Well, there were also different species of the pseudosuchians, at least sauropodomorphs, where they had relatively short ankle bones compared to their body size, which in some cases is a bit odd, at least on the pseudosuchian. And then again, it might not be due to many species of their descendants having quite small ankles and not, well, especially the semi-aquatic species, not really capable of running to an extent. But there were many terrestrial species of crocodilomorphs that were capable of running down smaller species of dinosaurs, and even later after the dinosaurs, different species of tusked mammals. So Soncelasuchus cedrus would have lived in the forest, and specific name cedrus represents the cedar tree, an evergreen conifer similar to those of late Triassic forests. Also, when it comes to the petrified petrified wood forest national park over in Arizona, there are many different specimens of coelophysis that come from there as well. Even certain, I believe, diacynodonts like the large Blocarius, so the tusked mammals, that come from that specific area, as well as adjacent geological regions. See, so, since starting field work at Petrified Forest in 2014, we have collected over 3,000 fossils from the Soencelasuchus bone bed. Whoa, that's astonishing. I don't believe I've heard of that large of a number of specimens coming from a specific area from any other species of Pseudosuchian. Now, it is also referring to it as like the Soencelasuchus bone bed. It's like the Placarius quarry in another area of Arizona. However, there were only like 36 um, Placarius in the region. Now, we are talking about animals that can weigh well over 2,500 pounds or pushing 1,200 kilograms compared to ones that might weigh uh, 40 pounds or a little over 15 kilograms. And it doesn't seem to show any signs of petering out, and are said University of Washington's Professor Christian Sider. In addition to Seleucus, the bone bed has yielded fossils of fish, amphibians, as well as dinosaurs and other reptiles. It's probably referring to maybe even Camposaurus from this area, if you're talking about specifically 215 million years ago. Certain other members of the Rausuchian lineage of Pseudosuchians, like Postasuchus, for instance, let's bring him up, is a member of the Rausuchian lineage of the Pseudosuchians. And
Who am I bringing up?
Postasuchus. So Postosuchus. So he probably or more likely existed in the region about 5 million years beforehand, around 220 million years ago. And the same would have occurred for different species of herbivores, such as the Placerius. So, also, it's showing in the 1999 series Walking with Dinosaurs model that it's a quadruped. But in more recent decades, well, I guess you could say shortly after the show, it has been reconstructed as being strictly bipedal. Now the question is, like the Sinalosuchus, was or were its young quadrupedal? So I don't think we have any evidence of these animals. Well, I don't think we have found any youngsters of Postasuchus. I think it's just only fragmentary remains, but I'm going to have to take a look at that. The problem is it literally looks like somebody took the reconstruction for Postasuchus back in the 1990s and just shrunk the forelimbs a little bit.
Is this a toy?
It looks like a model, like from some documentary or somebody's show. That's also not a Postasuchus. This looks like another type of Rausuchian. It could be from a later family of Pseudosuchians. It's not hitting me what this could be. There's a wide range of different species. This seems to be an older reconstruction of a Postasuchus, but um, yeah, he's still a quadruped. Well, taking away the quadruped or quadrupedal stance, his skull is still fairly off. It should have, I'd say, a little more of just a specific, like a Rausuchian sort of structure. I think this is more of approaching certain species of maybe even Allosaur, later Allosaur sort of species of dinosaurs, like referring to all of Allosauroideae, not Allosaurus itself. It's fairly different from Allosaurus. Well, that's a bit better when it comes to the skull structure. I'd say that looks more like a Rausuchian. Problem is the rest of the body. I'd say the skin texture. I mean, I really like that. The osteoderms on the top of its body. I don't believe we have any evidence for there being that rigid of a structure for the osteoderms, but the rest of it, I mean, I think it looks good despite the really short tail, bit too skinny of a core, and the very long legs compared to its body size.
Okay, I'm not. I don't even know what this is.
That might be him
It
or
says
it's
it.
yeah, or it's a close relative. I think he's still a little skinny. Now the overall reconstruction, the problem is the head's pointed at a bit of an angle. It definitely looks better. The arms are definitely more proportionate, but the arms might have been even smaller compared to its body size. Postasuchus did not have large arms. They might even be a bit long too. I was just also referring to at first, like the overall musculature. The feet don't look bad. I think there should be a bit more width to the tail. Now, there's also another species of not necessarily a pseudosuchian, but a bit of an earlier lineage of Archosaur. Yeah, it's just a goofy AI thing. Apparently, it killed a horse or a saiga antelope. I can't really tell what that is. Let's bring up a smaller species of Archosaur. The
Wait a minute.
um,
This is a strange mix.
So they've got the Dinosaur Revolution Saurosuchus on the left and the Walking with Dinosaurs Post-Suchus on the right. Saurosuchus, it does look like the Saurosuchus was a quadruped. However, they have it in the documentary where it's running all over the place and just jumping on top of cliffs. But it likely wasn't that quick of a creature. It was fairly heavy too. And we're talking about an animal that weighed well over 2,800 pounds or pushing over 1,700 kilograms and was pushing about 18 to 20 feet in length or around 6 meters. Post to Suchus probably reached somewhere around 16 to 17 feet or maybe 5 meters and only weighed maybe around the 800 to 1,000 pound realm,
What was the other thing you wanted?
around 400 kilograms. Okay, U part carrier. So EUPARKERIA. So this is one of the earliest species of archosaurs to exist. Now, technically, they would occur a bit further back into the late Permian, so over 252 million years ago. But this was still earlier on. This was around 249 million years ago. That is not a Euparkera. That looks like somebody um, just gave a certain species of lizard a lot of mutations. But besides that, it was quite small, maybe reaching around 3 feet in length or 3.3 feet, around a meter, and maybe weighed 10 to 15 pounds or a little over 6 kilograms. This is close to accurate for Euparkeria.
What are these
Um,
like prairie dogs or something?
yeah, they did. I wouldn't say prairie dog. I was thinking of almost like a certain small species of small breed of dog.
I don't know
Um,
why I said prairie.
Well, besides that, it does look like that they were, for the most part, bipedal. It is an archosauromorph, but it's not a member of the dinosaur lineage.
Is this it?
No, I don't think that's Euparkeria. Um, it might be. It's definitely a close relative, but I think it's a pseudosuchian. It's not hitting me what that was. Actually, I think it was found not too long ago too. But when it comes to Euparkeria, it's probably just feeding on very small species of lizards, insects in the region. It is also from South Africa as well, like the later Plateosauromorph. So, it's a very close uncle to the different species of dinosaurs, but it did not, or well, actually, I believe it's debate as to whether or not it became the dinosaurs in general. Also, it does look like it probably had the ability to somewhat support its weight on its forelimbs, but it seems like it probably, for the most part, was bipedal. And it's also likely it was taking maybe on certain other species of reptiles. I know I mentioned that's probably a fairly small species, but Euparkeria, especially for the time and its size, has rather a robust jaw structure along with much sharper teeth, at least when you look at the specific type of grooves and the dental or the tooth structure in general.
But this thing was in Walking with Dinosaurs?
This wasn't in Walking with Monsters. That's him. I Here's the thing. It really is not a bad model for Euparkeria, even when it comes to today. The arms might be a bit small, in my opinion. I mean, it's still not bad. I do like the coloration, the skin texture. Um, Though the tongue should not be sticking out in the air like that. I think the legs could possibly have slightly more muscle on them, but if anything, maybe make the skull, especially the upper jaw, well, and the bottom jaw too, a bit longer. But besides that, it's great for an early archosauromorph, and specifically, it's basically paleo accurate. It also likely didn't have any feathers because it seems to be that this was somewhat before feathers would have evolved. So it does seem to be that with certain earlier archosauromorphs, like certain species of the dinosauromorphs, and possibly even close relatives. I might have seen certain depictions of the early pseudosuchians that were more close related to the dinosaurs, maybe, than compared to crocodilomorphs that have been reconstructed with feathers, which is a bit odd since they were definitely closer to like true reptiles. Oh yeah, this is an older painting. Well, I think it's an older painting. I can't tell how old this is. It's got like a sort of, I don't know, mixed sort of an atmosphere to it. I would say though this carrier has quite thin ankles, but it is definitely showing a sort of like very theropod. They're giving it a very theropod sort of a look, at least when it comes to the feet, even the tail to an extent. This animal has a very different morphology compared to earlier members of Reptiliae, which is basically the whole lineage of reptiles. Very robust forelimbs, though. Um, okay. Well, thanks for joining. And we're streaming on both Rumble, YouTube, and Kick. And from prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. This is Creature Guy Live Daily News. Happy International Archosauromorph Day. And remember that nothing is better than all animals all the time.